and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to normal April weather here in Oregon, Sherwood. Yeah, you know, snow, why not? Roll call, Sylvia.
Mayor Mays.
Here.
Council President Rosner.
Here.
Councilor Garland.
Here.
Councilor Browse. Here. Councilor Young. Here. Councilor Scott.
Here.
Councilor Giles.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. We have approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Discussion on the motion. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Council. Next, we have two items on our consent agenda today. Item A is approval of the April 5th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. And item B is resolution 2022-022, authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract for the Langer Drive Grind and Inlay project.
With consent.
Second.
Moved and second. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Citizen comments. Now is the time to address Council if you'd like. First, anyone here in the audience like to address Council on a topic other than the public hearing item later on the agenda? Awesome. Anyone virtually? Seeing none. So we'll move on to presentations. We have three items under presentations today. First, a proclamation that April of this year is Volunteer Appreciation Month. Volunteering is an individual's time and resources is an essential part of the Sherwood community spirit. Individuals and communities are at the center of social change, discovering their power to make a difference. National Volunteer Week was established in 1974, and has grown exponentially each year, drawing endorsements from all U.S. presidents and from governors, mayors, and other elected officials. We have never needed the volunteer spirit more than we do today, and we have it strong in Sherwood. Volunteers have stepped up virtually and in person during the pandemic to support families, friends, neighbors, and strangers, people standing up to systematic racism, people sharing insights on how to create a more just and equitable society. We continue to rely on the efforts and dedicated volunteers to enrich our community, recognizing their volunteer sector as a third partner with government and business in building strong communities. So let us honor and celebrate and thank those that volunteer in our community and share their time, energy, knowledge, and abilities by proclaiming April 2022 as Volunteer Appreciation Month. I call upon everyone to help renew and sustain the Sherwood community spirit by committing themselves to address the needs of our community through volunteer action. As most of you know, we have people can serve and give back in a variety of ways, and they do, from schools to scouts to arts to sports to church. In our community, in city government, your elected officials are all volunteer. We have 8 citizen board of commission members, citizen boards and committees that are all volunteers that help do a lot of work for us and advance topics and recommendations up to City Council to act on. And we have other tremendous, wonderful volunteers that volunteer in the senior center, in the arts center, out in the community to help us do more as a city with our collective dollars as well. So thank you all. We are a strong community in large part due to volunteers. So Tammy Steffens, would you please come forward and expound on that a little bit more?
Thank you.
Otherwise, you hit it again. Your screen's good.
Oh, it was, okay. All right, thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, volunteers.
You can just hit play when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again because I firmly believe that I have the best job on staff. I get to work with almost every department, and I get to work with our amazing community members who choose the city of Sherwood to volunteer at. 2 years ago, we had volunteers from as young as 13 up to 80 plus, and from all walks of life. Their interests were as diverse as our programs. We had volunteers who helped out with summer reading, who served lunches at the senior center, who tested the ham radio at the PD, who checked in books at the library, changed out bulletin boards in the children's area at the library, helped with emergency management, welcomed attendees at the Center for the Arts, and so much more. Then COVID hit. COVID hit, and we had to significantly cut back on, and in some departments completely suspend our volunteer opportunities. Throughout that time, I had volunteers checking in with me for ways that they could still help, asking how they could give back, and if I knew of other organizations who were in need. I would get emails from volunteers asking me to let staff know how much they missed coming in. When the pandemic first hit, the senior center had to close, and staff there knew that they needed to figure out as quickly as possible how to still provide meals to so many who relied on it. We quickly realized, we quickly realized that there was no way we'd be able to prepare, package, and deliver meals without volunteers. And those volunteers continue to do so today. As we start to welcome back volunteers in other departments, we are so grateful for their commitment to our community. Our volunteers have a choice where they want to serve, and they choose us. They choose the city of Sherwood. So obviously, I love our volunteers, and I'm very grateful for them, but so are so many of our staff. So I'm going to play this video.
Because of your help and support, we're able to take our programs to the next level.
We love having you here at the Sherwood Center for the Arts.
We love our amazing volunteers. Thank you so much for all the time you dedicate to the police department and the city of Sherwood.
Hello and happy National Volunteer Week. Thank you for all you do at the library. We're so excited to welcome you back.
Thank you, volunteers.
We appreciate all you do.
From the city of Sherwood.
Thank you, City of Sherwood volunteers. We're so happy that you're back, and we appreciate all that you do. Thanks.
Thank you, City volunteers.
Thank you, City of Sherwood volunteers. We couldn't do it without you.
Welcome back, volunteers. Can't wait to work with you soon.
Thanks for everything you do, City of Sherwood volunteers.
Thank you, library volunteers.
We appreciate everything you do for us. It's so helpful.
Yay!
Thanks, City of Sherwood volunteers. Appreciate it.
Thank you, City of Sherwood volunteers. We couldn't do what we do without you.
Gracias a nuestros voluntarios de la ciudad de Sherwood, apreciamos todo lo que hacen por nosotros.
Thank you, City of Sherwood volunteers. We appreciate everything you do to support us.
Hi, I'd like to say thank you to our wonderful volunteers. We couldn't run the library without you. We appreciate you. Keep coming back.
City of Sherwood volunteers, thank you for your service. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, volunteers.
We are so grateful for our volunteers here at the Marjorie Stewart Senior Center. They're the lifeblood of how we get things done here, and we really couldn't survive without them. So thank you, volunteers. We love you every single day, and thank you for everything that you do for us and our community.
Thank you, volunteers.
We love our library volunteers. Yay, thank you.
Whether you're volunteering in one of these departments or anywhere across our community, you're making a difference. We appreciate you. We would not be able to provide all the services that we do without your help. Thank you so much for picking us to spend your time to volunteer with.
Yay.
I don't know how to close that off. Brad, you can get rid of it. So we do have some wonderful volunteers here. I would like to ask them to please stand. So we have volunteers from our senior center, from our police department, library. A couple of them have volunteered at multiple departments. So we're very grateful for them, as well as the ones that are joining us on YouTube and Zoom. So I want to thank all of them, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Tammy, you have a quick question.
Oh, yes, of course.
That video was wonderful. I'm assuming we're gonna get that out on social media so that you can.
Absolutely. I wanted to present it here first, and then literally first thing in the morning, I'll be posting it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well done.
Did you warn staff that you were gonna do that?
Yes, I did. I gave them fair warning. They all had an opportunity to say no if they wanted to. I didn't get any threats of, you know.
Say no to you, Tammy.
Oh. So yeah, it was.
Awesome.
I was pleased with how many people were willing to, you know, sure, I'll do it. So it was nice. I didn't have to bribe anybody. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Were there any other questions about?
No, just a big thank you to you too.
Oh,
for
thanks.
all the volunteers. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
Is there any opportunities to volunteer, say like maybe for picking up trash or anything this weekend or?
Oh, funny you should
Oh,
ask.
good. I was wondering if maybe there might be.
So we have Trash Palooza coming up on Saturday. It's our Earth Day celebration. We partner with Solve. This is the first time we've been able to do it the traditional way that we've always done it prior in the last 2 years. So we're excited to do it. Before the pandemic, we were the largest Solvit event in the state for, I think, 3 years. So I was really proud of us for that. Starts at 10 o'clock, Cannery Square, and it's going to be fun. Rain or shine, although I did check the forecast, there's only a 13% chance of rain. So yeah.
Tammy, do you have to sign up ahead of time or can you show up?
You don't have to. It's if you do sign up, there you go to sherwoodoregon.gov/trashpalooza. You can that way do your waiver online and it will be quicker for you the morning of, but you will have waivers there. So yeah, you don't have to.
Awesome.
Thank you. Good question.
Awesome. Then the third presentation is a certificate of appreciation. Is Debbie. Debbie, do you want to come forward? Do you mind if I and Chuck, you can just hang out in the back. If you just take a quick seat. Debbie is the proud daughter of Al and Jean Quattrochi.
Correct.
Okay. And Al, for, I truly don't know how many years, 30, 40?
Well, he started doing it in California, so it's well over 35 years of toy making.
So Al, her dad, was he was our Geppetto toy maker. He made wooden toys for Toys for Tots every year, thousands over the years. I remember seeing stories and put up in the Gazette about your parents and all the great volunteering of his time and skills to brighten the lives of kids. So they just celebrated their 75th
Yeah.
wedding anniversary.
They're home watching this, I hope. I believe he's home watching this.
Wonderful. And we're just thrilled. Want to thank your parents for all that they have done and want to give you the certificate of appreciation to present to your parents, Al and Jean, on behalf of the city of Sherwood and our community for the outstanding contributions to the Sherwood community as Sherwood's Geppetto, the wooden toy maker. Your skill and contributions of thousands of handcrafted toys will forever be part of the Sherwood community. So
wonderful.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. He made toys because he didn't have when he was a kid, and he couldn't stand the thought of a child not having a toy under the tree for Christmas. So that's why he was doing it. So thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have one public hearing on our agenda. First reading, Sylvia, would you like to read?
Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to receive testimony regarding ordinance 2022-004, amending sections of the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code for new housing choices to comply with Oregon House Bill 2001. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present a staff report, questions, if any, by the City Council for staff. We will then receive written testimony. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and the time will be limited to 4 minutes per person. Any interested person may present testimony. We will then close the public hearing. No other comments will be heard. Final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the council, followed by council discussion. This is the first hearing before the City Council on this item. Generally, the council will hold 2 hearings prior to making a decision. A second hearing on this item is currently scheduled for May the 3rd. However, in accordance with the city charter, council reserves the right to make a decision at the close of this hearing by a unanimous vote of all city council members. If you wish to speak, please fill out the request to speak form and submit to the city recorder prior to the time the public hearing is open for testimony. The mayor will recognize people who wish to speak. Any comments must be addressed through the mayor. When you come forward, please state your name and the place of residence for the record, as this hearing will be recorded.
Thank you, Sylvia. Hi, Joy.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor
And Eric.
Mays, and yes, and Councilors, Joy Chang, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. Just some background information. In 2019, legislation, House Bill 2001 required cities within the metropolitan service district boundary to allow for middle housing within traditional single-family zone areas by June 30th of this year. The Sherwood Zoning Community Development Code currently allows for typical single-family detached dwelling and some of the middle housing types, such as duplexes and townhomes, in addition to multifamily dwellings like apartments. House Bill 2001 requires that cities allow for additional housing types within all residential zones that allow for detached single-family dwellings, including plexes such as duplex, triplex, and quadplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters. The proposed housing choices code amendments are intended to comply with the requirements of House Bill 2001, while also ensuring that the housing types fit into the fabric of our community and neighborhoods. Last year, City Council approved residential design standards under Land Use 2021-016 PA. The residential design standards ensures that the housing design maintains context, scale, and compatibility with the Sherwood community. The standards focus on the following: entry location and orientation, garage and off-street parking areas, window coverage, minimum landscaping requirements in all residential zones, and other specific detailed designs. The new housing types that we're considering allowed under this ordinance will also be required to meet those residential design standards. Tonight, we will be discussing the new housing types that implements House Bill 2001, specifically triplex and quadplexes and cottage clustering. We're also going to provide an allowance to create fee simple lots through the condominium process at this time, and also making amendments that are minor, non-substantive housekeeping changes are also included within the proposed amendments. So let's discuss those in details. So the first housing type, again, we're discussing tonight is triplex and quadplexes. Residential minimum and maximum densities in the development code are not changing. However, implementation of the House Bill 2001 will increase housing densities because the opportunity to build triplex and quadplexes is permitted outright in all single-family residential zone per the House Bill. So proposed triplex and quadplexes development standards are based on the standards are identified in the Oregon Administrative Rule 660 and Division 46. Again, it's allowed in all residential zones that allows for detached single-family dwellings The maximum density standards are not applied to these plexes. Minimum lot width, depth, and setback standards are the same as single-family zones, and listed on this slide is the minimum lot areas. Let's see, did I go? Yeah, it's like, did I move really fast? I did. Sorry, my apologies. It's like I'm pressing too hard. Okay, so City Council and Planning Commission provide staff direction that driveway configuration must be made to maximize available on-street parking opportunities in front of both the lot itself and any adjoining lots. The proposed tri- and quadplex driveway standards that will assist in optimizing on-street parking. And they are total cumulative width of all driveways shall not exceed 50% of the street frontage, and also require one shared driveway for every 2 units. The shared driveway approach must not exceed 20 feet in width unless 20 feet of spacing can be achieved between the driveways. So those are what staff is proposing in regards to creating optimizing on-street parking, and has been vetted through Planning Commission. So cottage choices, as far as cottage clusters, residential minimum, again, minimum and maximum densities in the development code are not changing. However, again, the House bill will increase housing density because of the opportunity to develop cottage clusters on parcels is permitted outright. The densities, again, maximum density standards are not applied in cottage clusters. There is a minimum density of at least 4 units per acre. There is a minimum grouping of 8 cottages per common courtyard. And there is a maximum footprint of less than 900 square feet per cottage. But there is no maximum floor area. So that allows for multi-story cottages. And again, the proposed amendments are consistent with the minimum requirements of Oregon OAR 660 Division 46. The proposed setbacks are such for cottage clusters. They're pretty much the minimum is 10 feet for all the zones. The typical side yard setbacks are 5 feet as consistent with the existing code now. Off-street parking is as required is per the OAR, which is 1 space per unit. And adjustments or variance to the standards, if the cottage cluster development are not able to meet the clear and objective standards that we're proposing, they are not eligible for a type 1 or type 2 adjustment and variance review, and they would be required to go through a plan unit development review. All right, both City Council and Planning Commission directed staff to allow for 1.5 story homes for cottages. So what staff is proposing is a maximum height of 1.5 stories, not to exceed 25 feet in height, as reflected on this slide. These provisions, as written for 1-story home on a lot, and a typical 2-story home has a wall height of 8 feet, while a 1/2 story allows for a wall height of 3 feet as reflected on this image. Oops, apologies. And 1/2 story is already defined in our existing code, and it is a story under a gable hip and gambrel roof, the wall plates of which are at least 2 exterior walls are not more than 3 feet above the floor of such story.
Okay, I didn't see that anywhere. I will review. Granted, I've only got through 75 pages of the proposal.
Okay, for cottage clusters, we are proposing the first floor maximum building footprint of less than 900 square feet per OAR. And then we're also proposing second floor maximum of 50% of the square footage of the first, which is 449 square feet. So a total maximum of a 1.5 story unit would be 1,348 square foot. So we are also considering design standards where each cottage shall have the master bedroom located on the main floor. And per direction from council, garages are not allowed, but carports are. In continuing with Cottage Cluster, cottage community building is identified through the model code, and staff and planning commission has determined that the proposed amendments will allow for one single-story community building per cottage cluster development with a maximum of 1,800 square feet. And primary use for the community building is not a primary residence.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
And then just I have a comment for the community that's listening to this, but in the definition, in the documents you sent out for a cottage cluster, it talks about the community building and it mentions guest rooms or guest housing. Is that definition coming straight from HB 2001 or is that something that we inserted in there?
They are, it's not, it's the model code does touch base on community buildings and have very specific language as far as uses, what would be allowed and not. Just because they were at one point in time, they were looking at the square footage of the community building as part of the averaging of all of the units. So we took the averaging out as far as through our work and basically said, we're gonna allow for a community building that's technically twice as large as the typical cottage cluster. And we are stating that the primary residence, that it's not a primary residence so that the guest house is secondary use to the community building.
Yeah, I guess my comment there would be to make sure that we don't want it to turn into something where it becomes a rental property, or something like that.
Right.
To have the guest house in there? Is that required?
It is,
No.
the community building is not required, but what we've heard is as far as why is it that it's important to have possibly some rooms to rent out is because the cottage are pretty small.
Yeah.
And if let's say the children or grandchildren are coming to visit the grandparents that are living in the cottages, they want to be nearby the grandparents. And so they can technically in the future rent out these rooms so that they can be within the same complex.
And there's oftentimes restrictions on that. So it says, hey, you can rent it for 4 days, but not, 5 or things like that.
We just want
right?
to make sure we're covered on that. So it doesn't, a developer doesn't create apartments out of that, but.
Or an Airbnb center.
Or an Airbnb. But I did want to make a comment for people that might be listening. One of the, when we talk about housing choice in Sherwood, one of the reasons these cottage clusters are so important is because we have very few single-story homes, smaller homes that, especially once the kids are off to school and you want to stay in Sherwood, age in place. That's just an opportunity we don't have here, and that's one of the reasons we talked a lot about limiting the stories, master on the main. When we think about these cottage clusters, so we can have more opportunities for people to have more housing choice. So.
And frankly, also to attract some of the young families that may have one kid, right? Or they, and they're trying to set down roots here in Sherwood and trying to get into our beautiful schools. And you want them to be able to be on a path to home ownership. And so, I think it's beginning of life, end of life. We've got to give some options on that.
There's the state metro are putting a lot of pressure on cities to go vertical. And build more and more stories. I think we have to have some zoning and codes that promote this type of housing.
All right. So one of the key aspects of creating fee simple lots is going through a condominium process. We have not ever codified it in our existing zoning code. So we.
Is this part of SB 2001? Or is this something we're adding?
It's.
I don't think it's part of SB 2001, but I think through the hearings process, there was a lot of, or through our work sessions and hearings at planning commission, I think there was a lot of desire to promote home ownership instead of these being rental units. And the only way currently to do that is through the condominium process. I think the discussions at planning commission were really around how can we streamline the condominium process for these type of developments so that ideally more of them become viable units versus rental units. So no, I don't think it's required as part of it. But
So I do want to also point out that we are in the process of drafting language. We have to comply with Senate Bill 458, which is the Middle Housing Land Division. So we're drafting language at this time, and probably by fall, we will have some language in front of you to consider that.
So that's separate from this condominium process.
Yes, condominium.
How much do I hate the state?
So more work will be coming.
One bucket of work after another bucket of work.
All right.
And that could potentially make the condominium process move, right? Like this could just be a bridge in a short period of time. Like this is a way, if somebody was to develop under the current code before we do anything 458, this would be a way that the developer could make these viable units. Once the 458 implementation happens, it's more likely that would be the path toward feasible.
Otherwise, they just become expensive rental units.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a big ownership proponent. I agree as well. But
all right, so we're basically codifying
one thought to another thought to another thought without a unified thought. That just really irritates me.
All right, so we are codifying the condominium process, adding definition, procedure, required public improvements. And again, these all they also need to meet the appropriate requirements of Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 100, the condominiums. So since even though we don't have it codified at this time, if someone does want to condominiumize, we always refer back to the state law, to that section, to that chapter. Oops. I don't have a mouse. Okay, so again, the fourth aspect that we're actually discussing is minor non-substantive housekeeping changes like incorrect references. Like this example, the figure 8.3A is no longer figure 8.3A. So we're making a general statement looking at the adopted transportation system plan. It's just a cleaner way of implementing it. And it doesn't go out of date. We're also adding definition. We've noticed like in this slide here, primary use itself was buried in section 16.88, which is uses. So we just wanted to put it in definition so that it's clear. Oops, okay. All right, so Josh had an opportunity to do a legal review in regards to these amendments. So we did actually email those out to you, I think yesterday. They were a different color. We thought they were red, but then some of you saw them in purple.
It's all good.
Okay. But again, the proposed edits requested by the city attorney did not change the intent or the proposed language. They were made for clarity by eliminating ambiguity and definitely removed any incorrect cross references as we work through these amendments. So this slide identifies the applicable criteria for plan amendments. In the next couple of slides, we'll highlight some of these criteria, and I will not address all of them just because they were a bit addressed in the written staff report. So the community need, again, what we're doing, the plan amendment implements House Bill 2001 middle housing legislation. And I do want to stress that it was imperative that we did hear from the commission or from Planning Commission and Council that the amendments be the basic minimum required and nothing above and beyond. And so we were trying to honor that through these proposals. It is also consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan vision for attractive and attainable housing that we recently passed last year, where it says in 2014, Sherwood has a range of housing choices for a diversity of ages and income levels, providing community members the ability to live in Sherwood throughout all stages of life. Another aspect that I do want to highlight is citizen involvement and public engagement. There's been several, as reflected on this slide. We had a visual preference survey, virtual open house, and definitely in-person open house, in addition to all the outreach that we're doing through the typical hearing process. In addition to that, our project advisory committee is the Planning Commission. And they've been working diligently on this implementation of definitely the residential design standards and housing choices since December 8th of 2020. Wow. There's been 17 Planning Commission work sessions on residential design standards and the proposed housing choices with opportunity for public involvement. Furthermore, you, as far as Sherwood City Council, held 3 work session briefings on residential design standards and the proposed housing choices that allow the opportunity for the public to be involved. A goal 10 of the state is housing, and the purpose of goal 10 is to make sure that their community has adequate housing supplies for the 20-year planning period through a range of densities to choose from, and serve people of a variety of income levels. Again, Council approved 2019 to 2039 housing needs analysis that identified the deficit of land for 608 dwelling units. The proposed amendments will not decrease the supply needed for housing. And the amendments will allow for a variety of housing choices using clear and objective standards, meeting Goal 10 standards or requirement. Again, notice of the application was routed to the DLCD on February of this year. Email notice to Metro and agency partners on February 17th. Newspaper publication was also completed through the local Times publication. And as of today, agency partners did not provide any comments. We did receive 2 testimonies at the March 8th Planning Commission meeting. Opposition on how we got here, specifically home rule, where middle housing legislation was mandated to the city from the state. The need for additional on-street parking and also infrastructure needs were also identified. Testimony. All right, I lost my cursor. Sorry. Testimony related to cottage clusters consisted of not allowing garages, requesting that cottage cluster be 1-story, no stairs, and requiring possibly ADA cottage cluster units. Requiring ADA cottage cluster units would definitely be ideal. Follow up with the Planning Commission wasn't opposed to adding ADA requirements, but more time would be needed to develop these standards and vet it through the public and the Planning Commission. ADA requirements may be added in the future because we have heard from both the community and the Planning Commission that cottage cluster development is aimed for people who may want to age in place, but we're not considering them at this time.
So we haven't, all right, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, when you say no garages, was the concern that we weren't gonna allow garages, or was their concern is they thought we shouldn't allow garages?
I think that was the direction from council.
I know that, but you said these were public testimony. So the person who publicly testified, what was their concern?
No, he was actually in favor of having no garages.
Okay. And then as far as the ADA, would our current ADA standards then apply?
Typically, we don't have ADA standards specific to like a building itself, like someone that just submits for a building plan for a house. We have ADA standards for like parking, and accessibility, especially for multifamily, commercial, and industrial developments.
Gotcha. I was thinking along that different line.
Is there something we can kind of like get halfway there though, like in terms of just simple things like, having, instead of steps up to a door, there's a ramp, those types of things for a certain percentage. Is there like a halfway point?
We talked about this at one of the planning commission, either work sessions or public hearings. It was actually quite a long conversation, because that was kind of, I think, the gist of what some of us were looking at. Is there a way we can take some, maybe not full ADA compliance, but incremental steps? And I think there was two concerns. One, we may actually be doing more harm by trying to figure out, wing it and figure out, oh, what if we said that? What if we said ramps? What if we said this? And all of a sudden now we make this maybe cost prohibitive, so nobody actually builds it, right? And are we actually, we don't know what the need is, right? And I think we were looking at this as we're dipping a toe in the water, or we're trying to experiment and see what works and what doesn't. And so I think that was one of the concerns, and I think the timeline was another concern. But I mean, that was a robust conversation about it too.
So the cottage clusters of converting a existing single family lot where you can do any of these things, and having a developer choose to do cottage clusters, I don't know how often that'll happen, but I believe it's the intent of council and planning commission support to create a cottage cluster zoning.
Separate from this.
Right. And so in theory, if we do go ahead and create a cottage cluster zone, then you absolutely know that wherever you zone that is what will be built. And then we could address potential ADA standards, 1 story, no stairs or not, type thing.
Right, and that's an important nuance for the public to understand, because HB 2001 requires us to allow multiple different housing types in areas that are zoned for single family detached zoning. So if we have an area that's zoned for cottage clusters, all of a sudden that doesn't apply. So we can have.
But it's guaranteed to be cottage clusters, because we're doing all this work, and we turn the power over to the development community to decide what they want to build on legal lots that they own or acquire. And
to be clear, the city's not turning that power over. HB 2001, Salem passed specifically turn that power over to the developers.
Yeah. So so that's why it's just interesting, the whole thing. So I apologize for interrupting, but that's one element of addressing some of the concerns if we do intend to, if we do move forward, and I'm supportive of creating a cottage cluster zone, and then apply that zone in places in the future. Sherwood West areas, exactly as an example.
Right, so in addition to possibly creating the zone, this is our first brush in regards to these legislation, right? We could definitely update them in the future that after additional work has been done as far as research and outreach, bring it back to possibly requiring some type of ADA requirement.
Right.
So based on the above findings, staff recommends that the city council approve the proposed text amendments as modified and hold the second public hearing to this ordinance on May 3rd. I know that we received questions from the mayor this afternoon. So if anyone else has any additional questions, please let us know so we can get those questions answered before the next meeting.
And I would like, I think we have to do that today, is not have our next public hearing 2 weeks, but in 4 weeks.
We still be within the time here.
Or we meet in 2 weeks, but it gets continued. I'm just saying, I want to be able to vote on it. I'm not going to be here in 2 weeks.
So maybe we come back in 2 weeks and we can try to answer some of the questions that have come up at the first hearing and kind of have more discussion, and then plan on continuing that hearing to a third to actually vote on it.
I'm good with that too.
Is that what you need to do?
Because I think we've already noticed the second. Okay.
Oh, okay.
When's the deadline?
June 3rd.
Right.
So we have some time here.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
frankly, I'm okay with this stretching right to the deadline.
Well, we can, in the text, we can say when it goes into effect. You have to, normally it's 30 days. You can do it date specific, or you can declare an emergency, do it faster.
So, yes, but just note that we have to have actual acknowledgement from the state by June 30th.
Oh.
So that's why we're trying to.
I'm okay.
We're
I'm
trying-
okay.
okay.
I truly have zero concerns
Okay,
of getting acknowledgement from the state by June 30th.
If they drag this,
Zero
that's not-
concern. We will have done our job.
Did the state give a deadline to get it submitted to get that acknowledgement by June 30th?
no, but we're trying to give them like a month
Yeah.
head time.
Oh,
We can-
well,
we
that's
can
their,
get 48
that's their issue.
They can have 48 hours.
They don't give us a lot of time.
We'll give them more than 48 hours, but I'm not worried about the state. They're not worried about us.
All right, that concludes my staff report, and if you have other questions.
So first, it is a public hearing, so anybody in the audience want to give testimony on the proposal? Yeah, come on forward. Please sit at the dais and state your name.
Sure.
And address.
My name is Barry Kennedy. I live at 16518 Southwest Glen Drive. I've lived here about 52 years. And I was on the city council for 7 years in the 1990s. I was on the planning commission for 7 years also. I guess the question I have is, I noticed you're not allowing any kind of garages in this cottage cluster. Why is that?
So the concern or the idea is, if it is, you can't, it's difficult from an enforcement standpoint, it's difficult to, if you're trying to keep this a small dwelling unit, for not the garages to be converted to a living space.
I see, but I guess the concern I have currently, a lot of people their cars are being broken into, and things stolen from them. And I have a garage, but the people that don't have a garage, I don't know what the solution is to that. But was that ever discussed, the safety and the advantage of garages from being your car stolen?
That's an excellent point.
This is a real big issue here in Sherwood. It's happening on Facebook. That's what I read. It's happening almost every day. Somebody's breaking in. It's all over, not just Sherwood, it's Cloud and all the other areas. And I don't know. It seems like to me would this cottage cluster have some kind of housing authority that oversees it, and like a meeting,
The HOA or something.
HOA, is that right?
It could.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, what I would suggest you think about maybe providing some kind of security for it. And that may be the solution, but certainly looking at lighting and cameras and, finding some ways to, because that is a big problem here in Sherwood.
It's an excellent point. And I know from my point of view, as we were looking at that, a lot of the cottage cluster code is being dictated by the state. So like, for instance, a 900 square foot footprint with no maximum, those types of things. And part of my concern was, a developer could look at that code and just build a bunch of 3-story row houses, right? So we really wanted to make sure that this was a solution that really was geared toward people who want to age in the community or.
Is that why you require no stairs?
We currently do, the current proposal does allow stairs, but it's a limited 2nd-story space.
It's kind of like a loft.
More of a loft.
The reason for that was to keep the heights down.
Keep the height down, make it appealing to, I think about my own mom, right? She needs a 1-story house.
Right.
Yeah.
After when you get older, like I'm gonna be 80 this year.
Well, I'm already feeling that.
But I somehow am blessed. I have a 2-story house or a daylight basement house.
Well, there was one other reason. I was on the planning commission as well when we were discussing this. And one other reason for the carport would be that I believe that the state was saying we couldn't enforce more than one parking spot for these places. And this would encourage people to park their car in the carport versus street parking or some of the other, because we know that even in some of these houses, there's still gonna be two cars, right? And so we were trying to, encourage people to park in their carport versus storage or, convert into a living space or something like that. But one question I had, are we allowed to talk to the police chief during this? Is that a?
Yeah, we can.
We're done with the public.
Okay, all right.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
You mentioned HB 2001. Is that the one where you can't build single family houses?
So you have the developer has the option. So they acquire or they have a single family lot of whatever size. They can put a single family lot, a single family detached home, a duplex, triplex, or quad, depending upon the size of the lot. There's some requirements there, and then they have to meet the design standards that we set for that housing. But the developer has the choice. He or she can go one extreme or the other.
So you cannot restrict them not building something other than single.
Correct.
I mean, when I was in the 90s, there were single family residences that you couldn't build anything else.
Correct.
So
That's no more.
That's no longer. That's no longer. I guess the other thing I have is the last time I talked to you guys, I made a presentation about the possibility of a apartment complex on North Sherwood Boulevard at Glen Eagle. And I was concerned about the trees, but I have not heard about that. Have you heard about that project?
So I don't know the status, but we can get you information offline.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
coming.
Appreciate it.
You guys are doing a
Thank
good
you.
job.
Thank you for your service. Anyone else like to give testimony that's here? Anyone remotely want to call in? Brad? Nobody. Okay, so the public hearing portion of the first hearing of this proposed ordinance is closed. Questions of council or discussion of council? So if you have a question, Chief?
Yeah, so I was wondering if there are any statistics to back up the assertion that break-ins are becoming more frequent, or is this a case of social media magnifying what is essentially a static problem?
No, it's definitely increasing.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a daily occurrence, but yeah, it's compounded, and we have all the stats. I know the DA has a bunch of them. We have them through our stuff, so I can bring that to you so that you can see them. But yeah, it's a lot of outside of our community are coming in.
Yeah,
even outside of the unlocked doors, they're getting much more.
And catalytic converters too.
Well, yeah.
That
alone. So yeah, so the stats are definitely on the rise.
Okay, great, perfect, thanks.
Questions? So I sent my first batch of questions, and I'll probably have a few more.
Can you share those with us? Or?
So
We're gonna staff share this.
Yeah.
But we can ask.
So I just as a preview, I suggested that we'd make it be effective June 30th. I was just had a question about the alley definition in the code. If it was just alleys are allowed on multiple sides of a lot. I didn't understand the purpose of shared court. And ditto for Common Green Road. Is that mentioned to the shared court's brand new Common Green? I had never seen that before. I don't think anybody's ever used it. On page 17, I thought there was an error on describing the lot depth. It's just a fixed number. I don't know if it's supposed to be the minimum or max. Definition of how you determine residential building height. In the code, the example of hillside project and stuff. I'm not sold on front yard setback for 3 zones being 14 feet. I'm still waffling. Question on townhomes. Side yard 0, which makes sense if that's lot after lot after lot, but what if townhome zoning is attached to a different zoning? What's the transition? If you have a side yard and it just goes from one zoning type to another zoning type. you have to have a setback for the transition, and I didn't see that. Even the side yards, is it defined somewhere in that the 5 foot side yard be protected? So no HVAC, no natural gas meters, PG meters, fireplaces, cantilever over into it. That's where that is. Concern, I didn't see the rest of the cottage cluster about the 1.5 floors. But there's clearly some more for me to read, so I'll dig into that. The driveways, can we add language around maximizing the on-street parking to work around not only, the location of driveways and spacing, but also, I think Tim mentioned it at a previous work session, fire hydrants and post boxes, stuff like
Street lights, everything, making sure those placements are maximizing.
And that's kind of, that's not an easy sort of a thing to kind of fold into it all, at all. So I don't know what's possible, but it's a good challenge.
There was a long discussion about the parking at the planning commission. It is a challenge to get the wording right. Respect a lot of the work they did there. Right.
I raised the question about accessory structures and cottage clusters. So it's a shed. How many can they have in a project?
That's what I was thinking when we were talking about ADA. I thought in my mind I had ADU in my mind.
Are ADUs allowed in cottage clusters?
No.
Good.
The idea of in the PUD language, just to be really clear, it says that the city council has no requirement to give a reason to withhold approval. They just say no. I believe they should have to give a reason if they don't like a project. They can just say they don't like the project. So we codify that.
The code gives very flexible reasons to say no. So you don't say no for no reason, but you say no for the reason that it doesn't benefit the community, for example.
Because you want to say no in a way that you don't get appeal.
Right. I'm just thinking if you codify it, but that's a reason you can just say no, then you're protected. I'm just thinking out loud. Just trying to help future folks.
The mayonnaise doctor.
If you don't ask.
How long is it?
I'm telling you, I got through the first 47 pages.
I thought it was gonna be like 3 questions.
And I wasn't gonna go through them. You want to hear them, so I'm here. ADUs, I need to dig into the section of where are we allowing ADUs, in this new world.
Only on lots with single family detached homes, you can have an ADU. And that's in our ADU
That's already part of
chapter
our code.
16.86.
And just to know in the new world of this new law.
I understand.
So what if someone has a single family detached home, an ADU on it, and they want to turn their single family, it has to come into a duplex. They have to tear down the ADU.
We're getting in very edge case territory.
Sorry.
No, whatever.
Take that one off.
Okay. We'll come back with an answer on that one.
Not all my other ones. I'm just kidding. I know all the answers. And then I asked page 61, B2, did manufactured homes have to meet our design standards as well? I'm assuming yes, but it doesn't really say that.
Yeah. On the manufactured homes, I believe there was some legislation that they were trying to push through to allow manufactured homes on basically any lot. You need to check in on that.
Yeah,
and as it relates to this and design standards.
I think that I'm assuming that design standards are applicable to any kind of structure, if it's pre-built or not. There's nothing wrong with a manufactured house. So that's my list so far.
I have one more question. I was gonna go back to that guest room in the community building. So let's say there's 8 cottage clusters and they have this community building, so it's gotta be then part of an HOA, because who monitors that community building?
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Could we require an HOA?
Well, I think that I mean, the idea of the community center or the community area may or may not require, somebody to be, I mean, it could be just a park or play structure. I mean, it could be, I don't know, right? We wanted to keep it as, it seems like we wanted to be as flexible, but also, allow the builders to show us, hey, this might be something, but then we would come back and if it looks like it was being, abused, we would adjust it. But initially, we were just kind of following what other communities had done for those.
I agree, but if you have any kind of common space, there has to be a mechanism for the community to manage.
Correct.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, but requiring an HOA, okay, I'm just saying.
But I think they'll just take care of that by themselves, like they do in every other development. Like if somebody builds a common space, they're gonna have a mechanism for management. I don't think we have to mandate that.
We can provide more detailed answers to all these questions. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can have a cottage cluster that is single ownership and rented. That's an option. You wouldn't need an HOA in that circumstance.
Right.
I believe if you go through the condominium process under state law, I believe then you have to have an HOA.
Okay.
So if you
can
have
have
a law,
either single.
so if an owner built a cluster on their lot and rented all 8 units out, and they had a community building, then they can manage that community building however the heck they want to.
Gotcha.
Within the bounds of the code.
Right.
Yeah.
And I apologize, Sean, I had my laptop blocking you on my screen. Do you have questions?
I don't have any specific questions. Kind of as Joy had noted, we've gone through this multiple times, and I'm certainly excited about this idea of the cottage cluster. I've been kind of in favor of these for a while, so I'd like to see this starting to come together. I share the frustrations that my colleagues do up on the dais with the restrictions that have been imposed on us, and but I think we're making the best of that where we can. So I appreciate that we are working within our guidelines here and making this, making the best possible situation out of this. So look forward to seeing any other questions come up over the next few weeks and getting this moving forward. So thanks to Joy and staff.
Thanks, Sean.
I will say of the community examples that Erica shared with the Planning Commission, there was a development that had, a couple dozen housing units in it. Some were single family homes, some were cottage clusters, and the cottage clusters were all sold out. And the single family homes were still being sold. But it was one of these things where if we're looking, again, to encourage home ownership and, things like that, and this is, and that's in Washington was the example place. And I thought it was just interesting that, they were able to get them, and there is a demand, I think, there for this exact thing. So
Yeah, I think they will do well in Sherwood if the developer chooses to bring them in. And I know I have been talking about missing middle cottage clusters since I came to council. I had many meetings. So this morning I texted previous Councilor Kuiper, because she's the one that her and I have been talking about this and had meetings with lots of developers and whatnot. Hey, guess what? We're finally getting approved.
One suggestion or thought I had around maybe strengthening some of the language around the community building is, I think I'm not going to wordsmith this right now, but we have language in there around not being used as a primary residence. We may want to add language also cannot be used as a rental or, whatever, long-term rental, short-term rental. Maybe it's restricted to use of, friends and family or residents only. I don't know how far we want to go with it, but I think we can add some strengthening language there.
Learn from what others have done who have these things. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Awesome. Other questions? All right, and if you have questions as you're reviewing the proposal, please forward them to staff in the coming days. But so we got till end of June to adopt it. So if need be, have a couple more meetings. Going once, going twice? Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Erica. We will move on to city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will echo one comment that Tammy made a little bit earlier, which is Trashapalooza. It's officially this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Cannery Square. It is to Earth Day celebrations what Lollapalooza was to music festivals. So please feel free to attend. Also, I want to talk about the National Drug Take Back, which is Sherwood Police Department is hosting a drug drop-off for unwanted medications, and the importance of remembering that proper disposal of medications is critical to family safety, community safety, and the environment. And that is occurring on Saturday, April 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the police department. And finally, for me, the Sherwood Percussion Ensemble earned a first place trophy on April 9th at the state championships. The group is currently ranked second in the country and will compete in Dayton, Ohio in the WGI World Championships. So want to wish them luck. And
They left today with a police escort.
yeah, they did this morning. Yeah. So I'm hoping, they said they were putting YouTube videos up, but as of yet they haven't, but I'm hoping they are, because I'd like to be able to see what work they're doing and what a cool group it sounds like it is. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn on my time and ask if there's any questions for me or my staff.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Questions for Keith or his team?
Can I give a quick plug for something?
Sure.
Since I got the mic. So it's been a long time coming, and I didn't bring it up before, but we're doing Coffee with a Cop on May 7th. It's actually going to be May the 4th be with you. We are having probably 4 to 6 Mandalorians that will be present. It's going to be a whole Star Wars themed event.
Can we bring our lightsabers?
Yes. Yes. So there'll be more to come on that, but
So is it on May the 4th be with you day?
No,
or May the 7th?
it's May the 7th, close to May the 4th.
Celebrating May the 4th.
It's going to be Saturday, May 7th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It'll be at Dutch Bros, and in it'll spill out into the parking lot. We're going to be coordinating off areas of that so that they can be there in their uniforms, their whatever you call them. Outfits, costumes.
Armor, yeah.
Yes. I know we have another council meeting prior to that, but just for those that aren't on social media, we'll be plugging it pretty heavily coming up and getting that out there. So it'll be our first event since we've been back in session.
Very cool. Awesome. Any other council announcements? Sean, why don't you start?
I don't think I have anything this week, so I'll turn my time over to you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean.
I'll go. So first of all, I want to thank Taylor for taking over as liaison to Planning Commission. As I said, it's been kind of a bittersweet change, and I saw Erica and Joy today, talk to them. Obviously I've been a liaison to the PC for my entire time on council, so a little over 3 years. And then before that, I was of course on the Planning Commission for a while. So it feels weird not to be at those meetings after 5 or 6 years of steady attendance. So I really want to thank the staff and all the members of that Planning Commission, because it is definitely a very technical task and undertaking, and everybody spends a lot of time and a lot of effort and hours to make it all happen. So, I just really appreciate my time there. I'm really excited to get invested in Parks support now, liaison, but I'm certainly thankful for all my time on the Planning Commission. I'm just thankful for all the people who make that happen. So I just want to see you at Parks Board next month.
Awesome. Right.
I don't really have anything. Tomorrow is the library advisory board. I did attend the school board meeting last Wednesday, and Sue's getting ready to retire. And they celebrated the band and Mixolydians and some of the other students that are doing great things. Other than that, I can't think of anything to share tonight.
Yeah, so I'll expand on that. I was going to give a congratulations to the Mixolydian who won the Rose City Sing-Off first place up in Portland, and they will be performing in the Rose Rose Parade kind of festivals. And then it was the Sherwood Concert Choir that placed first in the district. And they'll be going to state, I want to say on May 7th. So congratulations to those organizations. We miss having Councilor Scott on the Planning Commission. He's always welcome back, and I'll step out if he wants to come back and fill in. We had a good meeting this last time. The main takeaway was there was still some concern on some of the alley definitions and things like that they're working on. But I think that, one of the ways that we can handle it is really to do, look what other cities have done, do the best that we can do. And, we do not have a lot of alleys, and we have one that we know of, I think was the determination. So we want to do as good a job as we can on the Planning Commission to make the rules around that, but then be open to changing it if we get them wrong.
I could point to 4 or 5.
Well,
4 or 5 alleys.
I'm saying that meet the strict definition that the Planning Commission was given about alleys. I think there was only a few. But with the idea that we're not locked into bad decisions, right? We're going to do our very best to make it. As a Planning Commission, we're going to do our best to make it usable, and make sure the light poles are not getting are not one-offs. They're not getting hit by garbage trucks, things like that, and that they're using the standard poles that PG&E support. So with all of this, it's just one of those things where, again, the attention to detail, and I joined Councilor Scott in thanking the people on that commission, especially Chair Simpson, because of the tremendous amount of hours that goes into that. So thank you, and thank you to the planning staff also for for all of the hours that are put in. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Okay.
I don't have much. Police Advisory Board meeting is canceled for this month. We will resume next month in June. YMCA, the Board of Managers hasn't met in, I don't know, at least 6 months, so I don't have any update there. And I think I'll do Sean's duty that he usually always reminds people. We have an election coming up. I think next week is your last week to get registered to vote. So do your civil duty and get registered and vote in May.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim.
Sean, you missed it.
I slipped my mind. I posted about it, I think, earlier today on Facebook, but forgot to mention it here tonight.
I'll keep it short. I had a couple meetings, had another NLC ITC committee meeting. For those listening, ITC is the Internet Telecom and Communications Committee, and their focus is policy and lobbying in the federal government on behalf of cities. Also met with the League of Oregon Cities Telecom Committee today. We had a really good committee, a lot of robust conversation about broadband and how we deploy it, digital equity, and lots of interesting stuff happening there. And also had a community development LOC planning meeting. The LOC meetings are all designed to put together a policy statement, in terms of LOC's lobbying the state government on behalf of the cities. So we go through a process where we come up with all these ideas, we vote on them, and we send them out to all the cities, and they vote on them, and then that becomes the guidance for LOC to go lobby on their behalf. So it's a great process, and LOC has a lot of pull in Salem, so it's important that we're a part of that. So I will leave it at that. Oh, Kim said it. You want to mention it?
Last week, I was on the LOC Finance and Taxation Committee, and 4-hour meeting. I believe this time, there's going to be lots of discussion on property taxes. Hopefully, we'll get some movement there this session. So 3 more meetings coming up, and we'll give some more updates.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting on Monday, fairly uneventful. TriMet scaled back their service levels system-wide. They are studying where they think they're not going to return service levels to where it was pre-pandemic. They're going to study where they think they should ramp up or pivot. So we'll see where all that goes. Had a League of Oregon City Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. that was interesting. A lot of very bright folks that eat transportation policy statewide, city staffers from all over the state, plus a few electeds. Interesting, ODOT popped in and let us all know that lo and behold, it reminded everybody, lo and behold, people didn't drive as much during the pandemic. And so they don't have as much gas tax revenue to disperse or to spend themselves on their network. So that's all coming to roost on the state network. So that'll be interesting. And LLC board meeting tomorrow. They're having their spring conferences in Hermiston this week, but I'm just attending virtually because I'm not able to make the trip. And normally it's a regional type thing. So that's enough. Anything else for the good of the collective? And we are adjourned to go to an exec session. Thank you, everybody.
That's the good of the order. That's the good of the order. Change stuff.